All right. Hey, everyone. So, I am going to take a detour from motion graphics this evening using Animate and After Effects. And I'm going to use InDesign. And what I'm going to do is produce a quick style guide using InDesign for typography, for colors, for logo placement, and things of that nature. So hopefully this is fairly interesting. I think next time I'm going to actually go ahead and get back into Adobe Animate. But I can see here, don't have a lot of people quite yet, which is just fine. I'm going to adjust my mic and everything. All right. So I need to figure out inside of InDesign some kind of template to use for my document size. And lots of times you're dealing with all sorts of things. I've used InDesign in the past a lot for compact disc, and this is going to actually provide us with a pretty nice kind of compact shape for our document. So maybe I'll actually choose that. I am going to use facing pages, so I can have some nice spreads in there. And for pages themselves, I need to think about what I might want to use. I'm going to need some logo specifications on a page. I need some color variations of the logo. Let's see what else. Things around colors being used, and also a bit around typography. So maybe I'll start with, let's see if we have a cover page, logo specs and variations, color palette, typography. That's about 4. Let's go with 4. Let's see how that works. There you go. All right. The rest of this I'm going to leave as it is. We can always mess with it later if we want to. Go ahead and create that. And there we go. We've got our document here. And if we go to pages, we have our cover and our subpages. So let's go ahead and have a look at some of these other bits and pieces here. You can see we got a couple people on the stream, so welcome. Please go ahead and chat away if you want to. I can definitely see the chat as we go through this process. Hopefully everything's going well for you all today. I'll close my pre-flight panel there. And what we're going to do is I've got... Let's see. I can pull this up. So I'm going to create a style guide for my little business here, Fractured Vision Media. We're a digital media production company, a technical consultancy, and independent record label. And what I'm going to do is incorporate this logo into our design for our style guide and produce some more formal content around it. I've never actually produced anything like this before, so it'll be a neat thing to try out. And I like to try out new things inside of these streams. So that's going to be perfect. So let's see what we got here. First thing I'm going to want to do is pull in a couple of my logos. I'm going to actually do this on page 2. So if you're not used to InDesign, inside of your pages, you have your page spreads here. And I've got my cover page. I've got a spread in the middle, pages 2 and 3. And then I have 4, which is basically a back page. So this doesn't need to be anything very complicated. Got a couple logos here. Pull in one right there. And right aside of it. Now this one is interesting because it's kind of white. I've got 2 different types of logos here. One is simply the mark. And then the other is the mark along with a little bit of the type. To identify this logo as Fractured Vision Media. So I'm going to go ahead and start working around this. Of course, we can't really see it that much inside of here. If we want to, we can always create some kind of a rectangle. Just so we can see how things are working here. So I've got a black rectangle. Let's right click and arrange that to the back. There we go. And we see the actual mark here with the type as well. And this, if I remember correctly, I think I redesigned this logo in like 2013 to go along with a slight rebrand. And what we want to do today, of course, is to push that a little bit further in 2020. So, not the best year so far, but it is what it is. We can see in our Pages tab here, we've got this stuff loaded up into page 2. So, the first thing I really need to do once I got these logos in here, I'm going to grab one of them. And we want to use that for our cover page. Paste that in. And there we go. I think give this a name. So I've never made a style and brand guide for Fractured Vision Media before, or anything really, just because, you know, with FVM, it's just me. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to actually go ahead and do that. But I do need to use this in some way for kind of what we're doing inside one of my classes. So if you're new here, if you haven't actually caught one of my streams before, I am faculty with the University of Colorado Boulder. And I teach in the advertising, PR, and media design department inside of that university. So I'm doing all sorts of stuff with all sorts of Creative Cloud applications. And, you know, my specialty outside of my university work is with Adobe Animate for sure. And again, we'll get to more Animate stuff as we move on. But of course, there are additional things that I do need to take care of, especially when preparing items like this. So we're going to kind of be all over the place inside of these streams. So I need to figure out what text I want to use for the guide itself. So this text isn't going to be part of the guidelines whatsoever. This is simply going to be something that I choose to use when I'm titling this stuff, when I'm dealing with this and that, right? So let's go ahead, put properties here. And of course, InDesign defaults to Minion Pro, which is probably not what we want. If I go to my Creative Cloud font filters, so my Adobe Fonts, I can filter that out. I always enjoy Jensen Pro. Not sure exactly why. It just seems really nice and very traditional in terms of type to me. I like the serifs, I like the spacing, that sort of thing. So, you know, I mean, you can always find the type that you like if doing something like this. But as I go through here, I'm going to just peek at everything and try to find something that really kind of speaks to me for this document. And I think for this, I want to go... Yeah. So I've got Hypatia Sans Pro here. I'm going to choose that for this initial font. Why did it switch back to Minion? Hypatia Sans Pro, please. There we go. And as I go in here, I'm going to go ahead and increase that type size here. Take this down a little bit. And change this from bold. Well, all I have is bold, so I can't really do that, can I? One thing I can do, and it's something that, you know, I find I often have to do when dealing with type, is if I want to diminish or lessen the impact of a specific typeface or like, you know, a certain heading or subheading, just tone down the coloring. So right now it's just straight black. I'm going to go ahead and take this down a bit. So for my fill in the appearance section of the properties panel, right now it's black, straight black. Let's go ahead and take that down to a lighter gray. And there we go. That does a little something right there. I can also go through inside of my character and paragraph settings, make some additional adjustments. So one thing I'm going to need to do is change the lighting here. There we are. There we go. Pull that up a little bit more. That works even better. And grab my line tool here. Just put a little horizontal line there to just break everything up. Pretty simple. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And there we are. So there's our heading page. You know, we could even make this a bit bigger too. Something that's, I think, probably pretty useful when you're dealing with style and brand guides is to actually add in a date. So today is August 20th, 2020. So what I'm going to do is type that in there. And if I like, I can, of course, change this to Hypatia Sans Pro again. From Myriad, take it down a bit. Maybe about 8 points. change the alignment, and even the positioning. Yeah. So that's looking pretty good. And there's something I like to do inside of InDesign, and that's InDesign is not something I use every day. Okay. This is something that I use once in a while. So lots of times I can't remember exactly where some of these things are, what the shortcuts are for them. And that's why stuff like this is really useful for me, because I can go through and actually kind of refresh myself. So one of the things we have here, if we go into the view menu, is screen mode. And I like to check my screen mode stuff. I like to check on my progress by switching on presentation. So this is the presentation view, and I think it's looking pretty good. We want to keep it fairly simple, and that's what's being done right here. Let's exit out of there by hitting the escape key. And then again, inside my pages, I need to figure out what I want to do for each of these additional pages. So this one is obviously going to have to do with logo placement and so forth. Let's grab that type tool, drag out a text area. We'll call this page Logo Specifications. And I don't want that to be straight up black. Somewhere around there. And again, Behance Sounds Pro. Now at this point, this is something that I can replicate from page to page. So I've got a couple of different, ways to actually do this. Inside of InDesign, one way is to go through and create this thing per my personal specifications, and then save this as a paragraph style. Another thing I could do is create a master style for these 3 other pages and apply that master style to each page. I think for this, it's simple enough that what I'm going to do is actually just create this as a paragraph style. But of course, I want to make sure that I get it right first. Gosh, I feel like there's no color in here. Of course, my logo is completely black and white. So maybe I shouldn't deal with color, at least right now. Let's push that up a little bit more. Let's go to straight 20. So this is another little weird thing. I don't like odd numbers. So I like to have any numbers that I am in control of be even numbers as I go through and I work with these different creations. So it's either going to be 18 or 20. I'm choosing 20, make it a little bigger. Then we've got our little line tool here. And of course, if you hold down the shift key as you drag out the line, it's going to keep it nice and straight for you. It's looking pretty good. So I've got 2 logo variations here. Oops. Oh, InDesign. Let's go ahead and move that down there. What is going on? Sometimes you need to go into your layers panel. Oops, my view window here. Layers. And we can see exactly what's going on here. So we got 2 PNG files, which you would think they'd behave the same way. Oh, of course. So I've got my rectangle background on this one, right? Let's go ahead and make a selection rectangle around both of those. You can see those are both selected here. And from there, we can do a Control or Command G. There we go. Now it is a group. And there we are. Perfect. We're going to line those up. And now we can start actually going through. Oh, before we do this, actually, and this is one of the most important things inside of InDesign, is to, once you've actually chosen a specific typeface and everything for certain things, like our page headers in this case, you're definitely going to want to create a paragraph or character style based off these. So I'm going to go ahead, go to properties, and let's create a paragraph style. So here we have text style, paragraph is selected. And if we choose this plus button here, we can create a new paragraph style. I'm going to name this page header. There we go. Now we have a new style we can apply to anything. So if I go ahead and click and drag something else, you can see initially it is this Minion font, Minion Pro. But if I use my drop down, I can choose to make it my page header. Super easy. Since this is actually on the same exact page, I'm going to shift click to select both of these objects, the text and the line. And then holding down the Alt key, I can drag them over to this new page. And what's going to happen is it's actually going to copy it. And for this page, I've got, let's do this one as color palette. There we go. And of course, if we go back out here and select both of these again, we can make another copy. You can see we need one down below there. So what I can do is zoom out from down below here. So I can see both of these spreads. If I hold down the Alt key, there we go. So my last page is going to have to deal with typography and headings. So there we go. You know what? Maybe I'll make this a little ampersand instead of the word and. Oh, invalid entry. All right, InDesign. Thank you. Oh, another one. Okay. There we go. I won't do that again. So window. No. Invalid entry again. Wow. For some reason, InDesign does not like me using the space bar modifier with my mouse to actually shift things around. Weird. I swear, I find like more bugs doing these live streams than I do actually looking for bugs in certain pre-release programs. All right. So we got our logo specs. So this first one here is going to be basically the logo mark with the actual name of the company. So I'm going to just put in, let's see, what should we call this? So this is going to be a combination logo mark, and then I'm going to have notes down here to use the daggers. Make sure to use the daggers whenever you replicate this. First thing we're going to do is change Minion Pro to Hypatia Sans Pro. And here we're gonna go ahead. Let's actually, let's make this some color. Add some color to it, right? So I'm gonna choose this red color here, and then I'm gonna modify it inside of my my color picker. That's a good start, I guess. So I do, I believe, have a paragraph break here. So let's go ahead and inside my paragraph properties, bust that up a little bit. Again, I don't want to use 7. I'm going to use 8. So use daggers. Along with the text. Bump that to 14. Fix that capital L. Sweet. All right. I'm going to deaden this a little bit too by taking the color down. I'm going to go like 50% here. Maybe a little more. It's either 61 or 59. I cannot get 60 right here. Unless I type it in. There we go. All right. So let's go ahead. I'm going to switch that to RGB color so I can have a bit more control over what we have going on here. All right, that's a lot better. So let's go ahead and change this. This will be a character style. Well, we can make it a paragraph style too. This is going to be a item header, new paragraph style, item header. And this fellow here is going to be item description. So of course, doing this, I can replicate this either by copying it with Alt or by just applying those styles somewhere else. And it not only allows me to apply the style somewhere else, but I can actually go through and what's the word? You know, if I change the actual styles that I'm working with, then I would be able to apply those elsewhere without having to copy anything. So it's always good to copy that stuff. So I'm going to call this circular mark. Just a little note here that we have no text. And again, this is a super, super simple brand and style guide. Let's have a look at it with our preview mode here. All right, well, we've got quite a bit of brightness going on. I can see in my webcam. This white is absolutely just bleeding out everywhere in my webcam. So let's turn that down a bit. That's probably better. So let's, excuse me, go through and create some additional items here. Color palettes. This isn't going to be hard. And you can see here too, I've got my little guides working. So I can make sure to line everything up really nicely with everything else. Lots of times it's going to be a super simple way to go through and do this. What you have to do is decide upon your specific swatch sizes. And then just alt copy these things. So it looks to me like I've got about 3 specific colors going on here. I got black. I got white. And then I have some gray. Get those guys all lined up. Excuse my cough. We have a lot of fires going on in Colorado right now. And unfortunately, it's making, it's giving people some scratchy throats, including myself. So. We'll just sample some of these colors here. Actually, that's a little reverse, I think, than what it should be. Let's shift this guy up. And of course, white, I suppose we don't really need to mention, and probably not black either. I mean, it's such a simple little logo. I gotta say, I'm not sure what happened to the promo stuff today, because it didn't go out, and so I don't have a lot of people viewing this, which is probably okay. This is not the most interesting thing to watch, right? So I'm gonna just call this one black. This will be a dark gray. Then we'll have a light gray. Then here what we want to do is put in the actual values that we're using. I come mostly from a web background. So, you know, before my current position, I was a software engineer on both the front end and the back end of a lot of different systems. And when you're dealing with front end stuff, you're almost always dealing with RGB or RGBA. Of course, RGB stands for red, green, and blue. You've got those 3 channels to work with. And if you're using RGBA, you've got the extra channel, which defines the alpha property, or the opacity, transparency, however you want to mention it. So let's have a look at what these are. Oops, don't want to use that. All right, so this is black. So I can tell you right now, this is going to be a straight up RGB. There we go. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Just like white is F, 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 F. So super interesting stuff. Let's check out my dark gray. Go into RGB mode again. There we go. We got 3D3, D3E. The nice thing about these hex codes is they are, you know, very specific. So if you need a very specific color, and you're working with digital or digital to print or whatever, you can always use a hex code and be sure that what you pass along is going to be exactly what you intend. Gosh, I am listening. I don't know if this is coming across at all. It's super, super low. And I'm trying to see what I can get away with here in these streams, but I'm actually listening to an album that I wrote back in... I don't know when this was released. It's called Shutterflowers. This particular track, Threadbare, is really nice. Anyhow. There's our color palettes, right? So if I go back to my pages and before we do that, let's actually have a look at it. Again, it's Shift W to view everything in this sort of presentation mode. And, I'll mention again, this is super, super simple when it comes to, a style guide, right? But it's a good example of how to put one together. So something I definitely want to is a little bit of text that explains what this is we're dealing with up here. Look at that. I'm able to actually use that now without InDesign freaking out at me, which is pretty special. So let's see. So just some information around what we're looking at here for our style guide. Of course, I'm going to change these properties again, right? Let's take this into item description mode. Then we're going to modify that. So nobody in the chat today, which there aren't a ton of people here. This is just a bad night. But this will be available for replay, of course. And if you are watching this on replay, hello to you too. All right. So just keep testing this thing out, making sure everything looks good. Because it's always hard to see with the UI around it and with all these little purple and blue lines and so forth, right? Shift W is a very welcome shortcut. So you can see exactly how things look. So I have a final bit to look at here, and that is typography and headings. This is going to differ quite a bit because we're actually going to use the typography that's approved for FVM, which, honest to goodness, if we look back up here, I cannot remember at all what type I used for any of that stuff. But we're not talking about the logo. The logo should probably almost always use a completely different typeface than any of the approved body or paragraph text that you're using for your brand or style guide. So, and the reason for that, of course, is because you want that sort of, you want it to have more of a punch, right? So if it uses the same stuff, it just kind of bleeds in to itself. And there's not a whole lot of stuff you can do about it. Doesn't stand out. So what I'm going to do here is just kind of make some stuff up. And sometimes what you got to do is pop over to something like Adobe Fonts to look at some additional options. If nothing works. See, I keep on, I found this, there's this font called Blackbeard. I think it looks really neat. It's just kind of like really smudgy and rough. And I want to use it for something. Maybe I will use it for this. So I'm going to use Blackbeard as my type there. And here, I'm going to name it Blackbeard. And mention where I grabbed it from, Adobe Fonts. Now, it might be useful in a guide like this to actually have some more information, like what is the type foundry that it came from, right? So what we can always do is go to find more. No. Can I not just like jump to Adobe Fonts from here? Okay. In that case, I'm going to open up my Creative Cloud application. Which is somewhere. There we go. There we go. Let's check if there's any updates too. I always like to check for updates. Seems like there's no updates right now, which is fine. But one of the cool things about the Creative Cloud desktop app is you can always go straight to fonts by clicking this little F up here or even over here on the side. And that's going to bring you into all of your active fonts. And from there, you can browse more fonts. Which takes you into the web browser to fonts.adobe.com, where you can go ahead and look at additional fonts. Now, one of the fonts that I mentioned was Blackbeard. So let's have a look for Blackbeard. There it is. So if you scroll down, you can see about Blackbeard. So the type designer is Ethan Dunham. You can visit the designer's page. Let's open that in a new tab right here. So here are all the other additional Adobe fonts that Ethan has created. And I like a lot of them. This is pretty cool. I like this one here. I like this one. Click Clack. So this is often a good way to find additional fonts. Ooh, John Doe is nice. Getting distracted. I want to look at Blackbeard. So you can see this is from Font Head Design. And what I can do is go through here, copy that information. Paste it right in there. So the font is Blackbeard from Font Head Design accessed through Adobe Fonts, right? So I also need to mention what this is. This is going to be a heading. We'll go ahead and make a subheading as well. For that, I think I'm just going to change the color and the actual text size. Level 2 heading. This will be a level 1. And then we need something completely different for our paragraph settings. And of course, you can go through and create type in your style guide for all sorts of different things. Anything you might possibly want, right? Let's go back to Adobe Fonts and find something else. And since some of these did strike me, maybe we should choose one of them. Let's grab Click Clack View Family. I want to activate both of these fonts, both regular and light. And check it out. We go right back to the Creative Cloud desktop application. And there's Click Clack, light and regular ready to use. If I pop back into InDesign, and there are Click Clack, light and regular. So Adobe Fonts, honestly, is one of the neatest things about the whole cloud aspect, in my opinion, of the Creative Cloud. It's great to have the ability to grab all these different typefaces and play with them and use them, and do whatever you want. You know, you can experiment with different pieces of type until you find exactly what you're looking for. All right, so let's replace the description here. Click Clack, right? And is there a space? No, no space. And as we saw, it's still Font Head Design, still same Foundry, and using Adobe Fonts as well to gather it together. So there's actually one. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's good, right? We've basically covered all of our bases here. So let's do a Shift W. So basic, super basic style guide for fractured vision media. We've got our date. We've got a little bit of text about the brand and what we're trying to accomplish here. We've got logo specs. And of course, you'd probably want to put a lot more specifications around this, like, you know, how it should be appropriately used with like spacing and so forth. We've got our color palette. So black, dark gray, light gray. You could also put in here things around like when it's appropriate to use each of these colors. And finally, we got typography and headings with our heading level 1, level 2, and our paragraph styles. So, of course, it depends upon what you're actually doing. You know, what's the content for? What's the brand and style guide for? This is pretty generic. It's for just about anything. But you might want to use it for print specifically, for web specifically, for app design. specifically. And you have to take all those things into consideration as you go through here. Your guide could be a multi-section guide. I've been streaming for about an hour now. So, this is the sort of thing you can accomplish in an hour with an existing brand logo and so forth. So it's not comprehensive by any means, but it is something. And it's an example that I can use in my class to just kind of show what a style and brand guide could look like in a very simple way. So I think what I'm going to do is stop the stream here. And again, so this is Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific time that we're dealing with this. I plan on streaming just about every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific time. And I also will probably have some sort of impromptu streams now and again. Things are getting settled in terms of the group of AELs that are streaming on Behance. So anybody who's watching the replay or who's joined me live, thank you for your time. And I hope something was useful here. It's always fun for me to play with new stuff. I've never really put a guide together like this, even though I've used InDesign for all sorts of different things in the past. So it was kind of fun to do this and to do it on something that I can repurpose for the classroom. All right. Well, I hope everyone has a good evening and stay safe. Stay away from all the nasty germs out there. All right. With that, I will end the stream. Good evening.